I admit that I live in a perpetual state of fascination when I watch mainstream and alternative pundits, whether it's left, right, progressive, centrist, moderate, talk about the things of politics, which, come on, let's admit, it's the clever and deceptive art of using euphemisms, lies, emotionalism, and fear-mongering in order to dupe average people into accepting and even demanding the chains of their own enslavement. So when I see episodes like this where Tim Pool and four other conservatives / moderates, let's just call them what they are, pro-Republican newscasters or podcasters are dogpiling one leftist progressive propagandist, that is Luke Beasley. So while I saw about an hour of the 2-hour show where TIMCAST IRL is kind of slamming Luke Beasley, I have not seen this video right here where Dave Pakman addresses the interaction and the confrontation and tries to hammer out the issues. But what I do find fascinating with this particular podcast from Tim Pool is that Luke Beasley was not being honest when pressed with the question, what is the right wing? You define for us what the right wing is. What are the political characteristics that define somebody who would identify as right wing? It's completely disingenuous for Luke Beasley, and he constantly refused to define what right wing is. It's disingenuous for somebody to do that when their bread and butter is condemning the right wing in favor of progressive leftist values. Let's take a look at Dave Pakman's treatment of this.
I have some unbelievable video to play for you, and I have to tell you, I'm pretty damn proud of what I'm about to play for you. Lone liberal Luke the Bee's Knees Beasley, who started going to Trump rallies for us now, I guess years ago, right? How long has it been? Luke Beasley appeared on the TIMCAST Earl, that's IRL, the TIMCAST Earl show, and
that's IRL is like in real life show.
He decimated 5 Megapotamians who brought the usual specious arguments out. This is real. You know, when I saw Luke in DC last week, he told me he was going to be doing this, and he seemed very well prepared. You know, one of the great things about going to the White House last week was not only did I get to see Luke and the Dollemores and others, I also met folks like Dean Withers, for example, who I think are just doing such a great job in these confrontational debates. And I said to Dean, and I said to Luke, I don't know if it's that I'm just too old for this crap, but I am too tired to go through the prep that's required to really seriously be prepared for these sorts of situations. They threw everything at Luke.
There's an underlying hypocrisy that undergirds both the left and the right, centrist, moderate, progressive. The underlying undertow, if you will, is that all of them are championing the cause of the redistribution of wealth. Now, wealth redistribution without your consent, without your approval, is otherwise known as theft. When it's done and the person who's committing the theft is armed, it's called extortion. I don't care if you're talking about Tim Pool, Luke Beasley, Dave Pakman, the Minority Report. I don't care if you're talking about Indisputable or TYT or Faux News. They all pawn their flavor of wealth redistribution on everyone else. They are backing a political party. They are trying to get a political paradigm in motion so that their side can advance their narrative. Make no mistake about it. And a lot of this, most of this, all of this has nothing to do with real individual rights and freedoms or the free market. That's why everybody who pushes either side, that's why I say that this channel right here, The Disturbing Illusion, exposes the left versus right paradigm lie. And it truly is a lie. It truly is propaganda. These are PR relations, public relations managers managing this cascading downfall of political psychopathy. Dave Pakman's doing it. Luke Beasley's doing it. Tim Pool's doing it. For some reason, I don't know why, Luke Rudowski is on board with all this stuff. The redheaded libertarian. There's so many people out here actually pushing political parasites that they know to be parasites, but you still got to vote for my side because we got better ideas than you do.
And I'm going to play for you. It's like a media literacy clinic, really. I'm going to play for you some of what I think are the key moments. This was 2.5 hours long, if you can believe that. Anyway, let's not even weigh in on that. But let's dive into it. A couple of different clips here. And one of the things that, well, let me play it first, and then I'll explain what's interesting about this.
It says from Antifa.
Again, tell me. I think you have a great explanation.
I certainly do. I'm wondering, as you've made an argument, if you know what you're talking about.
How does that connect to my argument?
Do you know the difference between various ideologies among the right and the left? You've not been able to define it.
I actually know. I would say I'm not a master in the distinguishment between different ideologies within a side.
Then how can you claim the right is more violent?
Oh, how can you claim the left is more violent?
Because I know many of these different factions
and your observations.
From my field reporting expertise and the reading of the research.
Well, then what research?
So if we distinguish, say, anarcho-libertarian, anarcho-communism, anarcho-syndicalism, we can talk about tankies, we can talk about social liberals, we can talk about traditional liberals. Now,
what Tim Pool is doing here is totally logically fallacious. It's fallacious, I should say. Oh boy. What? It's the day after. Okay. One of the things Tim Pool is doing here is he is trying to argue that if Luke can't define terms that Tim has arbitrarily put forward, Luke can't possibly evaluate data that shows that there is far more right-wing political violence in the United States than left-wing political violence. Now, these are two unrelated things. The thing that Tim asked Luke to define was, what's the difference between left-wing collectivism and right-wing collectivism? Luke said, I don't know. I mean, I can't define that, but that's a separate issue.
That's hilarious that he actually framed it like that, because that's not exactly what Tim Pool said. That may be the idea, but just to hear Dave Pakman articulate it like that, what's the difference between left-wing collectivism and right-wing collectivism? What's the difference between left-wing wealth redistribution and right-wing wealth redistribution? Both wings of the same bird, and they are two wings of the same bird, the same vulture that circles around and tries to victimize the rest of us under gun laws, under universal health care laws, under suppositions of UBI, universal basic income, in immigration reform, reproductive rights, voting rights, you name it. There is a law out there, and there's a flavor of politics that appeals to someone. And they're constantly throwing these ideas into the wind and against the wall to see which one sticks. But that's a great articulation of this. If Tim Pool is indeed asking, if there is a sense in which he is asking this, if he's asking Luke Beasley, what is the characteristic that defines the right? Because you're saying that more violence is happening on the side of the right. Who cares if more violence is happening on the side of the right or the left? Isn't the person who initiated violence, isn't that person the one who's solely responsible for inflicting that violence on others and creating victims? The answer is yes. So what does it matter if he belongs to the left wing or the right wing, or if he's a centrist, or if he's a moderate, or if he's an anarcho-capitalist? Does capitalism teach that it's okay to harm somebody or threaten to harm somebody or damage somebody's property and not pay for it? No, it absolutely does not. But corporatism does, the RNC does, the DNC does. They don't frame it like that, but wealth redistribution happens at the barrel of a government gun, whether you're talking about left wing or right wing. And this is the inherent contradiction in any political pundit who's out there preaching and distributing their narrative. If you think that I'm wrong, I want to hear your response in the comment section. We're going to continue with this.
Issue from crime. And of course, there is a relatively simple answer to the difference between left and right-wing collectivism, which is that right-wing collectivism is often based in national identity, racial identity, etc., whereas left-wing collectivism is more often based along class lines. That's what I would have said, but it doesn't matter, because we know that when you look at politically motivated violence in the United States, the vast majority of it is right wing. I would even argue, because they they love to pull this game where they say, and
what do you mean by violence, though, Dave? Every law that is written that infringes on any rights or takes one red cent from Americans is done through gun violence. How do we know? Because that's how laws are upheld. Laws serve two purposes. Number one, they take away, they remove freedoms, they regulate your freedom. And number two, they generate revenue for the state. And both ideas are entwined in this thing called a law, and it's backed by government sanctioned, what you would call gun violence. It's backed by the barrel of a government gun. I don't care if you're talking about right-wing collectivism or left-wing collectivism.
Radical Islamist-based violence is left-wing. Even if you give them that, most of the political violence is still right-wing. But I think if you look at the teachings of radical Islam, how can you argue that that's left-wing? There's nothing left-wing there. You do have the occasional eco-terrorist, which I think could accurately be branded as left-wing. And we don't want to fall into like a no true Scotsman thing where by definition, anyone who commits violence can't be left-wing. No, that's not true. You've got some eco-terrorism occasionally in the United States that we could say that's left-wing. But certainly the white national...
Above all, it is an individual act of violence. And for you to look at the act of violence on two or three people who happen to be left-wing or right-wing, and then exponentiate that and spread that onto all of the leftists or all of the rightists is inherently disingenuous. This argument actually from Tim Pool, from Luke Beasley, from Dave Pakman has no merit.
Nationalist violence and all of that stuff is overtly right-wing. And I would argue when you are committing violence in the name of a radical literal interpretation of religious doctrine, which you believe should govern civil government, which is what a radical interpretation of Islam would say, that seems fundamentally right-wing and authoritarian and fascistic. So anyway, the game that Tim Pool likes to play is saying...
But the left is authoritarian. And you can call the right wing fascistic if you want to, but it is authoritarianism as well. So it's what flavor of authoritarianism do we want today? Do we want right-wing authoritarianism or left-wing or moderate authoritarianism? Because authoritarianism by any other name is still control, it's despotism, it's anti-liberty.
Define these terms. And then when the person can't, you go, oh, well, you couldn't possibly just look at the data about crime, when of course you could. These are two completely different things. All right.
But he's already proving that you can easily define these terms. I can give you the political identifying characteristics that outline somebody who's a progressive or a leftist or a conservative or a rightist or a fascist. You can do that, especially if your bread and butter comes from calling out the right as you propagandize for the left.
We move ahead
which is what Beasley does, which is what the Minority Report does, which is what TYT does, Meidas Touch, and what Dave Pakman and Brian Tyler Cohen do. They are leftist, progressive propagandists that still want the barrel of a government gun to have their way against you. They want to victimize you so that they can have their social justice or whatever they want to implement. The right is the exact same way. They want to inflict and victimize the left so they can get what they want.
Briefly in this discussion, and this sort of thing just continues.
Read a press release from the University of Maryland. I'm asking you to define which groups.
I dug and I could not find any research, even that came from a right-wing institution, that gave
which right-wing institution?
I'm saying I couldn't find one.
I agree. You can't find a right-wing institution that tracks.
Oh, there are right-wing institutions that do studies and stuff.
They don't track this.
Sure, so maybe because they're studies. Do you see what's happening though? I think
you haven't done the research, and so you're saying
apparently you haven't even less than me. Sheesh.
I have 20 years of field reporting on the ground,
and every single time.
Sheesh.
You come back to
give me substance, bro.
I'm not downing him for that. I think that was hilarious.
That's what I'm asking you. I'm saying I don't get caught up, especially like let me give you another example. Crime has been going down. I could go find instances of crimes taking place, right?
The FBI lied about
The
it.
FBI lied about that. That crime is not going down. And they actually altered and admitted those statements. Crime didn't go down.
It's not even an argument.
It actually went up.
You do know the FBI revised the
For
crime
2022, not
That's right.
2023 and 2024.
Right.
We're seeing a really good trend on that front.
Do you know why?
In 2022, it was not a huge revision.
Do you know why homicide is down?
Tell me.
I'm asking you not.
Anyway, so he plays these games where he wants to set the terms. Answer this question, answer that question. And of course, this isn't really how we figure things out and get to reality. And I'll admit, this is a very tough situation to be in for Luke. And he handled it as well as... Also, he's around multiple of these people. And Luke is the newest to this of any of these folks and really holding his own. Let's go to another moment from this discussion where Tim Pool starts to get angry. He doesn't like how Luke is handling this, and Tim starts to get very angry.
Specifically cited his speech. My dude, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's fine. I get it. We try to be polite. We try to be nice. But there are so many young liberals who sit here and say, the corporate press told me that these people...
I always get a chuckle when somebody says something like that. We try to be kind. We try to be nice. We try to be understanding, but you just don't get it. It's like, if you have to try to be kind and nice and understanding, then you're automatically not kind and nice and understanding, because kindness and niceness and understanding just flows from people who are that. And those people have no desire to communicate with you. I'm trying to be nice and kind and understanding. It's hilarious.
People are bad, and the machine state government has decreed it by pen. So I don't care what crime...
It's like, I'm trying to be kind. I'm trying not to put my hands around this person's neck and just squeeze the air out of him. Really? You really have to try to not do that? Give me a break.
They committed. I don't care what the jury said. I don't care who was on the jury. Enrique Tarrio, who was not there, should be in prison for 2 decades. Tell me this now. Why is Enrique Tarrio in prison?
Yeah, so they uncovered with him his plot to overthrow the government.
Enrique Tarry's?
Yeah, and his organization.
What plot? Who's they? Give me some
prosecutors.
Give me some fucking data. Stop squinting at me and saying the prosecutors did a thing.
Luke's squinting because Tim's losing his mind. He's coming at this with this indignant, how dare you come in here and say things? Why won't you do dictionary and define every term I give you? Why won't you just tell me I'm right, Luke? This is so triggering to Tim.
No, you didn't read it. You didn't read the court papers. All you know is the fascist machine state told you he should be in prison, and you're saying yes to them. Tell me why.
No, I understand that laws on the books have been there for a long time, that I agree with, that if it's proven that you had a plan and you wanted to act on it, then days after...
What's the proof?
The proof...
Say the proof.
By prosecutors.
Say it.
Communication.
You know, the problem with everything that is being levied here is you could just as easily turn this around on Tim and say, okay, so it sounds like you're essentially saying you don't respect the way that the laws are written. You don't respect the conclusions of a jury within a trial. You're just saying none of it really matters. And so we could turn that around and say, okay, so listen, Kyle Rittenhouse's acquittal, I don't agree with the way that the self-defense law is written. I don't agree with the conclusions of the jury. I think the system was biased in his favor. This is sort of the conspiracy loophole or black hole I've talked about before, where evidence for and evidence against or absence of evidence, it all points to the same conclusion because you've predetermined it. And this is, of course, another one of those examples where despite the recorded audio tapes of Enrique Tarrio, the Proud Boy leader, despite prosecutors proving their case, despite everything that happened, Tim just doesn't agree with it. And so the thing that if I were to critique Luke here, I would say, he should have more quickly recognized it doesn't matter what he says. It almost, in the 2.5 hours, it almost doesn't matter what Luke says, because what this is really about, it seems to me, is that Tim really didn't like that 20-whatever-year-old Luke Beasley came in and faced down 5 of these people and all they could do was blow up and yell at him. Let's look at a little bit more of this.
And this may be true, but you have to understand that there's also an undercurrent of cognitive dissonance on both sides. If you are so dedicated to your side, Luke Beasley, Dave Pakman, Meidas Touch, Brian Tyler Cohen, TYT, the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, are so committed to progressive propagandism, and Tim Pool is so dedicated, and his ilk are dedicated to right-wing propagandism, then they're both suffering from a severe case of cognitive dissonance. And because they've taken a position and cemented themselves in that position and locked themselves in their own echo chamber, they will not, because they cannot hear the other side. Even they can't even determine that the other side is basically their side, because they are both pushing for the initiation of unjust force and violence on peaceful people who haven't done anything wrong through leftist policies or rightist policies. The only true moral principled position is voluntarism, anarchism. Anarchism meaning no rulers, not no rules. But the voluntarist position is the top of the line as far as morality is concerned, and you can string policy to that morality very, very easily. It's just that nobody has the heart for it because it is not yet popular. It will be popular. It will be popular one day. Not right now. But just because it's not popular doesn't mean that it's not right. And we know leftism and rightism and centrism is not right because it's all predicated on massive wealth redistribution programs. And I just want to say this. For Luke Beasley to not answer Tim Pool's question about, hey, define what right wing is. You know what right wing is. You can come close to it. Right wing is conservatism. They have conservative values. They uphold traditional values and resist rapid societal changes. Economic liberalism also denotes rightism or the right wing, advocating for free market policies, lower taxes and deregulation. But the reason Luke Beasley doesn't want to talk about overtly what rightism is because who can be against free market policies? Who can be against lower taxes? Who can be against getting the government out of your business and deregulating? They can decry nationalism as fascism, but that's another defining characteristic of the right wing. So maybe Luke Beasley could have started out with, well, what marks a right wing person versus left wing is nationalism. They prioritize national sovereignty, and I'm against it, and here's why. If he said another thing that marks conservatism or the right wing branch is law and order. Under the sun, who would be against law and order? Now, you and I know that, okay, first of all, whose order is it and who's making the laws? Because usually it's psychopathic political parasites. But they emphasize strict enforcement of laws and a strong criminal justice system. The only problem is they only abide by the laws that suit them and go against us. For example, there's 18 U.S.C. 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. Name one law, name one case study, name one Supreme Court case that was solidified that doesn't deprive people of their rights under color of law. And I don't care what it is. For example, when a political parasite makes a gun law, that's deprivation of rights under color of law. You have the right. Actually, nobody's got the right to keep you from owning, keeping, and bearing arms. Nobody does. And there's no limit to the kind or the amount that you may want to inquire as far as firearms and ammunition. But there are people who are for gun control, and they're on both sides of the aisle. So for Luke Beasley to not answer Tim Pool's question about what is the demarcation between the right and the left, you talk about right wing all the time. Go ahead and define right wing. And Luke Beasley could have easily said, these are the characteristics that, from what I've seen, defines the right wing versus the left wing. Individual responsibility marks the right wing, or at least they say it does. Religious and cultural values, the skepticism on the subject of globalism. Those are some things that outline and denote what right wing is. Luke Beasley could have said that. He didn't, so he's playing this cat and mouse game, pretending like he doesn't know and switching the question, going, well, you tell me what you think rightism is. It's disgusting. It's disingenuous. It's deplorable. And for Dave Pakman to sit here and just take the side of Luke Beasley sight unseen because, they're playing for the same team owners on their side, on the progressive side, is it's not right. It's wrong.
What communications? What did he say? What did he do?
It's hilarious to see Tim Pool act like this, by the way. Tim Pool could easily have gone to the internet, or one of the other guys could have gone to the internet and corrected Tim Pool and said, well, here's what they say Enrique Tarrio has done. Here's what they say he's guilty of. He had private communications. He assumed a leadership role as the national chairman that looked like they were calling the shots. We have Telegram communications, encrypted Telegram communications on Telegram and Parler. There's the documented strategy. Prosecutors presented a document called the 1776 Returns, which outlines a plan to occupy government buildings. While the exact origin of the document was disputed, it was linked to Tarrio and the Proud Boys' broader intent. He could have brought this stuff up. Now, what I would like is exact quotes from Tarrio, like, make no mistake, we did this. That message was sent by Tarrio during the Capitol breach, indicating his acknowledgement of the group's involvement. He said, quote, do what must be done. Tarrio issued this as a directive to his followers as the events unfolded on January 6th. And I'm not telling you what side of the aisle I land on January 6th, because there's a lot of things that happened that are highly questionable, even among the FED agents who may or may not have been there. In a group chat later that day, when somebody inquired about their next steps, Tarrio responded with, do it again, implying a willingness to repeat similar actions. Am I saying Tarrio should be in prison? No. You know what I'm saying? Who did Tarrio name? The victim of Enrique Tarrio. Name the victim or victims of the Proud Boys. Name the victims. If you have a victim, then you have a real crime. If you don't have a victim, you don't have a crime. Therefore, people who have not committed a crime or left a victim do not deserve to be in a jail cell. If you disagree with me on that, let me know in the comments. Let's continue with this.
Is this serious?
Are you going to tell me why you think Enrique Tarrio should be in prison for 20 years, or are you going to say the government decreed it?
I just explained to you.
So the government said so. Is that it?
It's usually law enforcement, which I guess is part of the government.
Government said so?
Yep. Law enforcement that uncovers evidence of communications, a memo that he...
It's sort of like, how does law enforcement work?
Crafted and sent to his organization.
Saying what?
That detailed each institution of government that they were going to try to overthrow. Then just days later, his organization is at the Capitol.
Typing.
I don't think we can even pull up Enrique Tarrio.
I'm not quite.
All right. So then about a minute goes by, and then it's maybe like the absolute funniest moment where Luke is immediately proven right. And it makes Tim Pool's entire blow up seem really stupid.
States that is true. Well, now we got a problem. Let's try this again. Let's try a secondary source. Let's see.
Sorry, let me back up because we actually missed it. Tim looks it up, and it's exactly what Luke said.
In the article. So here's a citation. Proud Boy and 3 other members of the far-right groups were convicted Thursday in a plot to attack the Capitol. A jury in Washington, D.C. found Tarrio and 3 lieutenants guilty of seditious conspiracy after hearing dozens of witnesses. Jurors cleared a 5th defendant, Dominic Pizzola, a citizen charge, and a significant milestone of the Justice Department, which is now secured a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah.
Uh-oh, it's exactly what Luke said.
They will never stop. Okay, that's interesting.
It's not. It's actually not exactly what Luke said.
Wikipedia asserts that they did this, but there's actually nothing in the news article that actually states that is true. Well, now we got a problem.
Well, not only that, if you have a news article that does say something that looks like it goes against Enrique Tarrio, okay, give me quotes directly from Enrique Tarrio. Don't give me an Associated Press news article that says this is how it is, just believe us.
Let's try this again. Let's try a secondary source. Let's see. There it is. They introduced evidence that Tarrio discussed with associates a plan to have a large crowd in Washington storm government buildings in a scheme they called 1776 Returns, in which the Winter Palace was used as an apparent code for the U.S. Capitol. In a message, he said, make no mistake, we did this. Do what must be done. And he directed the Proud Boys to do it again.
Exactly what we just went over.
So the question then becomes, in the bigger picture...
So are you going to at all acknowledge that you just blew up over something that I was absolutely citing fairly?
I don't think you cited it fairly.
I think people should be prosecuted for engaging in plans to overthrow our government. That's kind of
That's a very
Think about what Luke Beasley just said there. I think that people should be prosecuted for overthrowing or attempting to or making plans to overthrow one of the most highly sophisticated, dastardly criminal organizations known to mankind, the U.S. government.
loose definition of plans to overthrow the government.
Now the terms are too loose, and it's all... Listen, this is really a masterclass from Luke put in a very difficult position. I'm not going to play this entire thing, but here's another moment where the topic of the deficit came up, and this is really good.
So
you're not hearing me.
The large spike was COVID. I actually don't know if Trump's debt was in any way more egregious than any of the past presidents. It looks rather linear.
Yeah, I just think if you, again, since this portrays it in a different video.
Hold on a second. Looks rather linear? I would say this is linear. This 2008 to 2009 where the crash comes in, that's accelerated. And then you go on all the way here to 2019. That's 2018. This is 2019. And then you got this massive jump right here from, what does it look like? $23 trillion to looks like about 27 or 28 trillion dollars in 1 year. That's 2019 to 2020. Who's in office then? Donald Trump. And then you have this other big jump from 2023 to 2024 with Biden. But this right here doesn't even take into account the $6.2 trillion CARE Act, which included a $4 trillion Federal Reserve backstop. So it really wasn't an accumulation of $8.4 trillion from 2016 to 2020. It was more like $12.4 trillion, which means that Trump racked up more national debt, on the books national debt, because we know there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but he racked up more on the books national debt in 4 years, Trump did, than Obama did in 8. And yet, you have to be honest with yourself. As Amschel Rothschild said, give me control over the nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws. It doesn't matter who the governor, the congressman, the senators, the president of the United States is. It's the people behind the scenes that are pulling the strings, calling the shots, and getting the lobbyists in there to hammer out legislation that benefits corporate elites and bankster overlords. You have to admit that no matter who gets into the presidency, the people who control the issuance and value of the currency, which are the people that own all of the cards, all of the chips on the monopoly board, they are the ones who are truly in control. And until we deal with that, leftists, rightists, centrists, we're not dealing with anything, and nothing will ever change in a substantive manner.
Visual Axios Trump Biden debt, should pull it up. Trump does have, I mean, he added more to the debt than any president.
That's true.
But again,
this one says he ran up
twice
COVID to be
the debt.
I don't know about
Right. That's COVID.
No, exclude.
Yeah. That's COVID, 1984 by George Orwell. Yeah. What? He was the president of the United States, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the ruler, the leader of the free world. He could have said no. He could have said, no, you know what? This is the direction we're taking. We're going to take the direction of the free market. I will not bow down to the big pharma industrial complex or the military industrial complex. I will not give these people $1 out of your pocket and pretend that this whole thing's legit. But he didn't do it because he is not in control. And that should sober up and concern every single American. Why doesn't it?
Look, non-COVID.
Oh, I see. You're right. Yeah, non-COVID relief. Trump is more than double Biden. I see Trump's position, and I don't.
Quickly get that off the screen.
Yeah. That's pretty disingenuous of Tim. I agree.
Is that you want to be under leveraged? His idea is that you want to maintain growth above spending, and then it doesn't matter if you're.
But he failed to do that even before COVID. I think we agree.
I don't know. I mean, the economy was doing fairly well, regardless.
But if you look at the
Now he's changing that. This is a classic.
Wow.
Now he changes the topic.
Wow.
Now, Tim, from going from the debt and deficit issue, once that was proven wrong by Luke, Tim just goes, the economy kind of seemed to be doing fine, which is a different argument. That's a modern monetary theory argument, which is even despite deficit spending, if it's on the right stuff, the country and the economy could be doing fine, which I think is an important topic to engage with, but it's one they deny until Luke Beasley shoves it in their face. Really nice job by Luke here. And 2.5 hours, exhausting to deal with these people, but very nicely done. All right,
All right, guys, this is wild because we have a group of people who act like they're on the opposite side of the spectrum when they're literally playing into the hands of the same bankster corporate team owners. I know this was a long video. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end. If you disagree with anything that I said, and I think that a lot of this stuff is very, very simple. I think not that it would be easy to correct course when we have all of these Federal Reserve notes in circulation. There's going to be some hemorrhaging. There's going to be some tough times ahead of us, but it doesn't mean that we can't turn this ship around. We can. And the answer is simple, but there are some complexities involved and some propaganda that we have to wade through and tear down and expose if we are going to continue on as a prosperous and free society. Because I'm telling you right now, there are organizations, highly intelligent people, whole governments that are formulating plans to move completely away from the American dollar. And if that happens, all those Federal Reserve chickens will come home to roost. Nobody's going to want anything to do with them, which means they will immediately lose their value. And if that happens with Enbridge or any of these other CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, or any one of the basket of economic policies that these other countries are trying to align on, we are screwed. And the hemorrhaging will be great, not just in the United States, but anybody who's left holding the bag of the Federal Reserve Note Ponzi scheme. So leave your thoughts about this for the world and the global thought police in the comment section below. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody you know. Don't forget to subscribe to my email list through my website, highimpactflix.com. That's highimpactflix.com. If you want to support the channel further, grab a shirt, become a channel member, but more importantly, understand that freedom is dangerous. The only thing more dangerous is not having freedom. I will see you in the next video.